car 43 in third place, who's been lapping in the 51, late 51s, and looking very good with it. As Brock does a similar lap time, actually, on that occasion. So Hansford lapping pretty much, I think, as quickly as at this stage as Grice in second place and Brock in first. They won, of course, the second round of this year's 6-round Endurance Championship at Oran Park on the 19th of August, and did it very nicely indeed. But looks now fairly unlikely, with 26 laps remaining, for them to be able to repeat the dose. You might remember the point score we put up earlier. Peter McLeod leading the series, 31 points from a third and a 7th place from Gary Scott, 25. Neither of them to feature in this one, nor Dick Johnson, nor Brian Nightingale lying 4th, nor Richards lying 5th, nor Glenn Seaton 6th, Bob Stevens and Mike Bergman equal 7th. So Moffat and Hansford will come up. They will get 25 points each in a race that requires a second driver and will leap to the lead in the series. They will come up from 12.5 to 37.5. No, sorry, but they're not in first place. They're on third points, which is 20 each, on top of 12.5, 32.5. They'd still be 1.5 in the lead. Compared with Brock, who didn't start in hasn't started in either round, and Grice, who hasn't finished in either round. Oh. And there we are. Second place, 34.7 seconds in arrears. And I was saying, could Moffat win? And one of the two obstructions to him doing so is just now in massive trouble.
Lap 104, Grice stops. He tries to restart the motor car. The ignition light you can see coming on, and it's not happening. And he has to park it out on the circuit. That is the end of the motor race for Alan Grice.
Well, I sympathise with Alan Grice, with the Roadways team, and Steve Harrington for a great job come to a premature end.
Fantastic effort from them. Really well done.
Yep. Great front run by Grice to argue, to lead the race, to keep the car out there till lap 50. Tremendous backup job by Steve Harrington. And then a takeover from Grice. Well answered by Peter Brock, but looking good and done everything right to deserve and to take second place. Very bad luck for them.
So now Greg Hansford and Alan Moffat move up into second position behind Peter Brock. One lap down is John Harvey with David Parsons. Then 2 laps down is car 18, Murray Carter and John Goss, getting closer all the time with 104 laps down. And then 4 laps down is the Bernie Stack Holden Commodore, followed by Alf Grant and Craig Harris in the Falcon XD. Then car 77, Peter Williamson, as we look at Peter Brock in the lead.
And car 51 behind that, Tony Mulvihill, Brian Nightingale
in 7th position. And in the pits is Neil Crompton. Meantime, back on the circuit is Peter Brock. We'll be back with Neil in a moment. And the gap between Peter Brock back to Greg Hansford is 1 minute 38.7 seconds.
A lap all but 10 seconds or 12 seconds.
It'll be interesting to see which way that falls. As Warren Cullen and Alan Jones go back out onto the circuit, travelling very slowly up the main straight. There they are. It's Cullen in the car.
I'd like to raise the question as to whether the Stuyvesant Mazda can definitely go through to the end of the race without having to pit for a little bit of fuel. It was lap 37 that Hansford went into the car, which is 82 laps.
No, he didn't. Alan Moffat came in on that lap, then went back out again. And Greg Hansford took his second stop, right. So in fact it's had 2 stops.
It seemed too long for Greg Hansford. I'd forgotten his second stop. Brock is only about 13 seconds behind him, of course, on the track. Therefore, almost a lap in front. And the gap between them most easily detected by timing it from the second place car back to first. And that gap is 9.3 seconds. So Brock appears to be hauling him in.
Interestingly, with Cullen rejoined, he rejoins in 9th position, even though he's lost some 16 laps. He's still in 9th place behind Peter Brock.
Very interesting to see Peter Williamson's Salik at Supra in 7th place, the first of the Group A cars. Now, although it's well sorted in some ways, it's not in others. It doesn't have a close ratio box, just landed here. And what it does say, admittedly it's 4 laps down, is that when they're sorted and when various other people get the wide variety of cars that we'll see in Group A, next year's Touring Car Championship, I think, will obviously be slower at this stage than this one, but there won't be much in it, and in a year or two's time, there'll be almost nothing in it.
Well, while we worked out earlier that Alan Moffat would take over the lead in the Australian Endurance Championship, of course now with 23 points, he still will on 35.5 points. And going into second place by dint of their 8th position at the moment will be the Bathurst pair of Brian Nightingale, who will now go up to 34.5 points, only 1 point behind Alan Moffat. And that'll be a great thrill for the people watching in Bathurst today. He's been sponsored by no fewer than 4 local hotels in Bathurst, and there are parties in each of them this afternoon. So to those folks in Bathurst, your team's doing well. They're in 8th position and they're lying 2nd in the Australian Endurance title.
7.33 seconds, the gap from second place Greg Hansford back to the race leader, Peter Brock, who is hauling him in constantly, and again laps the GTV Alpha of Colin Bond and Peter Fitzgerald. So Peter Brock at the moment headed towards putting 1 lap in front of every other car in the field and heading towards his 10th victory, going into double figures in this Sandown Enduro. What a record.
Laps remaining as Alan Grice walks back to the pits. Good run, Gricey. It's obviously been a hard effort.
Peter Brock first won this race in 1973, the year after he first won at Bathurst, 72. He then won it in 1974, 75, 76, 77, 78, 9, 80, 81. Then missed it in 82 and 3. So he had a consecutive run from 73 till 81. Australian Touring Car Champion 3 times, a winner of the Repco Round Australia Trial, of course, in 79. He's got the natural flair that found him very much at home in a rally car. Put in a great performance there, and now just in recent times has opened the 3rd new premises for HDT Special Vehicles, Peter Brock's own business here in Bertie Street, Melbourne, where he is putting out over 1,200 cars a year, including his new Group 3 Commodore, and it's that car that's the basis for the Group A Commodores for next year. Everybody will be buying the car as developed in suspension and so on by Brock and manufactured into that run of minimum 1,000 cars in the year to comply with the local requirements for International Group A. International Group A says 5,000 in the year. CAMS has allowed that local models can comply with 1,000 built. It'll be the 1,000 cars put through HDT Special Vehicles, Peter Brock's own business.
And if you like to look at it another way, that means that Peter Brock has just become the 6th largest motor manufacturer in Australia.
Yes, it's his own money behind it, and it is expanding rapidly. He's doing a great job as we look at Steve Masterton in the car that was one of the earliest of the big cars to disappoint.
And I think that's only...
And into the pits comes Greg Hansford. Question mark. Problem. Hand over to Alan Moffat. Is Alan Moffat ready? He wasn't when we last saw him in the pits.
One churn of petrol only, 9.02 seconds for Greg Hansford. That was planned. And he's back onto the circuit, losing only 9.02 seconds to Peter Brock. Actually stopped in the pits, probably 20 by the time you get from start to finish. Pulls out in front of Colin Bond, but it's a long way back. Behind him comes the Valentine car of Murray Carter and John Goss. And after 110 laps, Peter Brock and Larry Perkins lead from Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford, with Harvey and Parsons in 3rd place.
The question mark must arise as to whether Peter Brock would have to do the same thing. But he is now more than a lap in front of any of the opposition. It was certainly very close to necessitating another pit stop when Brock got into the car. About 48 laps. I think he was only going to go about 1 lap past the 129 lap race distance from when he pitted and got into the car for this final stint. But even if he were to do that, it will make very little difference to the overall outcome.
There is now only one man on lap 110, and his name is Peter Brock. Brock went through Hansford when Hansford came to the pits. Hansford is now 2 minutes 6.5 seconds behind Brock, who is lapping at about 1 minute 50. And Brock holds a mortgage on the Castrol 500.
A lot of people had questioned Brock's reliability, because this year we've seen the Holden dealer team Commodores stop a number of times with mechanical problems. My opinion was that they weren't overly worried about some of those earlier races, but they got very serious for this one. And you can see how well prepared as Alan Grice in one of the, well, was in one of the 4 brand new VK Commodores debuting at this race. And I think for all that people and some other competitors may not approve of the way Alan Grice sometimes does a bit of panel banging with other competitors, I think all would agree that he has driven admirably in this race. But when Brock got serious for this race, well, then everything stitched together beautifully. And I have him as an unbackable favourite for Bathurst with Larry Perkins, in my opinion. But mind you, I hate forecasting races, and particularly long-distance ones. And with so many unknown factors in a race of that length, things can go wrong. But I think they will be far and away the hottest combination at Bathurst, and I think it'll be Dick Johnson and Brock, the only 2 contending for pole position. And look at the front wheel, stopped as he was still braking as he turned into that corner. It was stationary till, like an aircraft landing, it skimmed the ground and started turning again. I don't know, John Smales, whether I heard somebody keen to start wagering on a future motor race back in the van there, but
Well, I think for certain, Will, that Dick Johnson would take a bit of your money from you right now.
well, go out on a limb and say that I picked Brock as the unbackable favourites because I place his co-driver, Larry Perkins, as faster than Dick Johnson's co-driver, John French, and this combination, the only reason I put it back is because the car is not so well suited to Bathurst. At Sandown, I had them as the hot favourites, but I've done very well. I was going to say they're in third place. They've come out into second, but had to battle to do so. And it's only been that bogey of unreliability, let's be honest, that's got them there. They didn't have the pace. But they'd have run the race differently, I suspect, John Stales, if they were to start off again.
Indeed, I'm sure they would. Well, as we just look back at the gap between car 43, Greg Hansford, and car 25, John Harvey, the gap between second and third position is 38.35 seconds. And in the pits is undoubtedly a disappointed Alan Grice.
Alan Grice, just when things were looking good, the whole plan unfolds the wrong way.
Yeah, first of all, a silly seatbelt. We just couldn't get done up. You'll never see that seatbelt again. And then we broke second gear. We were trying to nurse the gearbox. We thought it would be the Achilles heel of this type of motor car around here, and we obviously didn't nurse it enough. It's broken second gear, and I'd say there's no other gear, so it's probably the constant velocity at the centre of the gearbox.
Also, looking at your left hand here, Alan, it's showing a few blisters. It's a fairly difficult physical task out there.
It
Just
is.
have a look.
Yeah, it's a bit blistered. We've got another event to go yet too, but never mind. But that's par for the course.
Well, hopefully you can learn from this and things will be better at Bathurst.
Yeah, it was a great hit out for a brand new motor car, and it certainly got the pace. And gearboxes aren't a problem at Bathurst, so, you know, I think we're looking good.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Alan Grice was in second gear 5 times on every lap, and it wasn't just a case of using second gear to work up to something else. It was second gear on, second gear off, then on again, really powering that gearbox in second cog, and really it had to break.
Hansford is 1 lap and 19 seconds behind this man, Brock. The sort of times Brock's doing, and 112 laps covered, and a fairly substantial 17 laps remaining, it's still valid to ask the question as to whether his second gear will stand up, particularly considering the times he's been doing. I don't think he can accept that nothing will necessarily happen to this car.
Group A leader, Peter Williamson, Charlie O'Brien at the wheel. Williamson did the first stint, O'Brien doing the second. They are only having 1 pit stop. And that's it, the Toyota Supra, 2.8 litre, 6-cylinder motor, 5-speed gearbox. We're in the pits and we see there the John Sands car of Rusty French with Graham Moore from Sydney getting oil into the motor car. 2 big carburettors under the bonnet, 5 litre of V8 Holden. It's French out and Moore going into the motor car even at this late stage at 113 laps, or is it? No, it's French in the motor car and Moore out. So Rusty will get to take it to the second, to the finish. Rusty French, of course, was the highest placed Australian in this year's Le Mans 24-hour race, finishing really ninth
place, yes. Peter Brock, just a 50.93, averaging 126.7. Average speeds down from about 158 kilometres an hour on the old 3.1 kilometre track. So Brock is still pounding, and as I say, it could happen at any moment. I'm not in any way wishing it, but second gear is the problem, the one that they're in when they hit it with full noise, and a tremendous amount of torque reaction through the car, through the gearbox, and a tremendous amount of backloading on the teeth when they lift off at 6,000 and 7,000 revs as they go through this area, the tight section. Brock probably, well, looking at the time, I don't know if he is stroking it through in third gear.
He picks up third just about here as he comes out of this section of track. So he picks up third about there and holds third down until he gets to the next stop corner, which is coming up.
But then he has a section where he's in second and he has to hold it.
Yeah, he's back in second there.
Gun it, lift, gun it again. Gun it again after a lift. And now, gun it again, second gear. Now up to, and it takes him halfway along that straight before he gets into third. He comes out so slowly in second gear. He says it could be a first gear corner.
Then it's back to second here.
And that's what's putting the strain on the car.
He's in second all the way through here and picks up third as he comes past the pits there.
But that's all right because he takes it out of second and into third, and that obviates the problem. It's when they have to stay in a cog, and it's a low cog with enormous torque reaction. 150.56 for Peter Brock. 127 kilometres an hour average. And we talked earlier of Alan Grice putting pressure on and showing faith in Steve Harrington, and the same sort of total faith being shown in Greg Hansford by Alan Moffat. As we look again at the Group A class leader, Peter Williamson and Charlie O'Brien, car 77, the Toyota Supra. 2.8 litres, fuel injected, independent rear end, 5-speed transmission, but wide ratio at the moment, close ratio to come, and built-in jacking system. Qualified well, 58.5 compared to Bond, the next fastest car in the class, at 2 minutes 1.4.
Australian Motor Industries, the distributors of Toyotas in Australia, have in fact themselves entered motorsport and will be at the James Hardy 1000, but running a Toyota Corolla-based Sprinter with a 1.6 litre twin-cam motor being driven by John Smith.
And in fact, in so doing, decided not to use Peter Williamson.
And here's Brock, again the leader of the outright class, passes the leader of the Group A class. And one wonders what the situation will be next year when Brock also has to run a Group A car, which will be based, of course, on the V8 Commodore he's currently in.
He's got about 390 horsepower at the moment. He reckons he'll come back to 330, 340 or something in Group A spec. The main thing in an engine sense is he does a 50.9 second lap, so under 51 for the last 3 laps. The main difference is that they must run the manufacturer's air cleaner, intake and exhaust manifolding, so they can't open up the inlet system of the car and the exhaust with big individual branch manifolds as they can presently in Group C. But they go very high compression. Enrico Zannarini thought in the Alpha they'd probably be on about 12.5 to 1 compression on the Auto Delta GTV6. Warren Cullen in car 8. He is 9 laps in arrears in 5th, 8th, 9th place outright. So the field been decimated, and that really was forecast. And most of it not only is tied down to gearbox, but it's tied down to second gear in the gearbox. One of many cars, in fact this car using the latest, and Ron Harrop feels the best of his new brake calipers, and all of the Commodores, and as I said earlier, the Stuyvesant Mazda using his fully floating axle. That merely meaning the flange isn't on the axle, that when the car corners and loads up on the tyre, it doesn't flex the axle and give it that sort of problem. But a very unusual situation occurred at Sandown today when the former chief mechanic, and no, not team manager, Alan Horsley was the Stuyvesant team manager, but the chief mechanic was Mick Webb for the Stuyvesant team, and he's now running the Kmart team as manager.
Mick Webb, a rather unusually long stop there for Warren Cullen before, just when the car was looking very good.
Yes, we're running really well, everything to plan. Alan Jones had got out and said the car was running perfect. And then when Warren got in it, the car started to misfire and carry on, so he couldn't stop. The engine flooded and he got back, one of the carburetors flooded, so we had to finally found the problem, so we disconnected one of the carburetors, and it's now finishing the race only on half a carburetor type thing.
How are you adapting from Japanese to Australian machinery?
Well, I have got a business that specialises in V8, so I don't have a problem with V8 engines, and Fords and Commodores, what I specialise in. So really the job I'm doing is what I was doing for Alan, was trying to organise the team. So I've had a good teacher. So
Good luck at that.
thank you very much.
A lot of people in the publicity that surrounds touring car racing may feel that Mick Webber merged with Alan Moffat and the Mazda RX-7. He dates back to Burmar Sellers Stillwell and single-seater racing back in the 1960s. He's been around a very long time, and most of the time for top teams.
.117 laps down, 12 remaining. Peter Brock in the lead by 1 lap from Greg Hansford and Alan Moffat. Then 40.4 seconds back to John Harvey in 3rd position. So Hansford opening the gap on Harvey by about 1.5 seconds.
12 laps remaining, 60 times back into 2nd gear for Peter Brock. And all that backlash and loading of 390 horsepower through the face of only a few square centimetres of a few small teeth. He doesn't deserve it, and I'm certainly not wishing it. But
you're trying to get him longer odds for Bathurst anyway, aren't you?
I think he's on very short odds.
Brock up the back straight, just cooling his hands there. You can see the hands came off the wheel, thumb's still on it, but just cooling his palms. You'll be noticing down the main straight as well that he actually takes his elbow and puts it on the sill of the motor car. Not because he's lazy, he's actually trying to get some air into the motor car to cool himself off.
The Australian Endurance Championship last year, equal number of points as manufacturers to Holden and Mazda, 131, from Ford on 84, BMW on 67, Nissan 50, Audi 21, Chevrolet and Alfa Romeo equal on 11 each, 7th outright. But the championship as a driver won by Peter McLeod, the Mazda RX-7 from Jim Richards, 5 points ahead, 72 to 67. George Fury, Alan Moffat, Alan Grice, Greg Hansford, and problems for Warren Cullen in ninth place, 9 laps behind. Just to finish that, it was Hansford, Finnegan, Perkins, Brock 8th equal, 36.5 points.
This year, incidentally, after 2 rounds of the Manufacturers' Championship, Mazda leads the championship on 45 points from General Motors, Holden on 33, Ford on 32, Nissan 25, and BMW on 20.
39 kilometres, therefore, remaining in this Castrol 500-kilometre race. In the Australian Endurance Championship, 3 weeks' time, Bathurst is the 4th round. 4th of November, Surfers Paradise is the 5th round, and the 25th of November, Adelaide Raceway, the final round.
Incidentally, if they finish in the order they are now in, Mazda will still hold the lead on 68 points from Holden on 58.
As Cullen comes into the pits. Doesn't look to me like a 2nd gear problem from the speed he's coming, but may well be the continuation of the carburetor problem that they had earlier. Probably is trickling around. No, it's not carburetor, it's back end.
And for Mick Webb, this also has become a development exercise as they now try to find out what's wrong at the back end of the motor car. And with less than 10 laps remaining, Peter Brock's paranoia at this stage will be mounting immensely.
38 cars started the Castrol 500, 119 laps ago. There are 18 remaining, 20 are not running, and car 8's a question mark. Rusty French, Graham Moore, car number 10. And number 10 too, a question mark. So it could be 20 running, or things go badly, could be 18. 9 laps remaining. Brock in his race. Not only winner of it 9 times, but 9 times consecutively. The first time this year with the 25% longer distance and the international requirement that no driver can drive more than 3.5 hours. The first time that co-drivers have been necessary. This is a great credit really to Brock's Marlborough Holden dealer team, because among the front-running big engine cars, the V8s, they are the only survivors. And they start at 2 and they have 2 running, and that says an enormous amount about the way they build the cars and about the way the drivers treat them when they're out there.
Well, I stand to be corrected, but with the exception of the Bernie Stack car from South Australia, the only 2 Holden Commodores left running in the race are the 2 Marlborough Holden dealer team Commodores in 1st and 3rd position. There are 4 Fords remaining, but only one of those is a Ford Falcon. The rest are an assortment of Escorts and Capris. There's 1 Alfa, 1 Isuzu, 4 Mazdas and 1 Toyota.
And this man romping away from them now, 1 lap, 33.97 seconds in front of second placed Greg Hansford in the Stuyvesant Mazda number 43, and it 34 seconds in front of third placed David Parsons and John Harvey, who appear to be making ground on Hansford in second.
There's the sole remaining Ford Falcon behind Alan Moffat. That of Alf Grant and Craig Harris, the Queensland edited Falcon XD, which is the ex-Dick Johnston car, doesn't he wish he still owned it today? There goes car 74, leading Class B as we believe. That's the Dean Lindstrom Mazda RX-7 in the under 3 litre class. And the car in 3rd position, John Harvey, and the tape is very precarious indeed, although what I guess at the top of that is a little bit of string.
Well, what's happened, I think, is the door's working on it and likely to chafe through the tape ultimately, because it has to go round inside the way they had it taped, the back door as well.
The Holden count has just gone up. Warren Cullen's back on the track, so we've now got 4 Holden Commodores out there.
Frank Gardner very worried, I think, as he prepared for this race, which has always been seen as a warm-up for drivers, crews, and so on for Bathurst. Now, not only is it not a warm-up for Bathurst, but it is much longer and harder on the cars. And he said, we're really faced with a total rebuild for the cars in 3 weeks' time, really only 2 weeks before they start to head to Bathurst. Must be in absolutely top fettle. 39 seconds in front of the car we were just looking at is this one, piloted at the moment by Greg Hansford.
There's car 25 in 3rd position, John Harvey at the wheel. And in front, we caught a glimpse of the Murray Carter John Goss Mazda RX-7 in 4th position, 3 laps down on Peter Brock, 2 laps down on Harvey.
while a depleted field is running around on the track. Let's go down to the superb new pit area complex, not quite completed, but to Neil Crompton down there.
Pit boards play a very important role in touring car racing, as you well know. But for the Marlborough Holden dealer team, their pit board conveys perhaps some slightly different information. As you can see here on my left, Peter Brock's favourite football team, the Collingwood team, 24 points in front. So not only looking at outright victory here today, but also looking at his team's victory.
And that's probably worth a few tenths of a second to Peter Brock. Collingwood against Fitzroy, the underdogs. And he said earlier this morning, the Woods respond best when they're underdogs. And I reckon the first thing will happen that when he and Bev get home tonight is on with the video and have a look at the football match. Peter Brock's a bit of a religion to Melbourne car race enthusiasts, and to Peter Brock, Collingwood and VFL football is also a religion. 123 laps completed, he's on 124, he has 5 remaining after this, which make 19.5 kilometres before he takes victory for the 10th time in the Sandown Enduro.
And Brock's young son with something of an identity problem at the circuit today. He's arrived in full Collingwood regalia, black and white, with just a small button on his lapel that says Peter Brock, General Motors provided the body, Peter Brock provided the soul, referring to the Holden Commodore.
Referring specifically to his latest Group 3 car.
Indeed.
Which one has to say is a credit to him. A performance car par excellence, which can stand at a very much reduced price up very proudly against some highly renowned European names.
Brock goes by one more lap down. The noises in the back are probably getting louder as far as Brocky is concerned. Greg Hansford in second position, 2 minutes 29.5 seconds in arrears. That's 1 lap and about 50 seconds. No, it's not, 1 lap and 30 seconds.
It's actually going to work out to be the average of those. 1 lap and about 40. You can see the mathematical section of Smale's brain turning over there. And my stopwatch tells me that it's 1 lap, 42.86 seconds in arrears in second place, and about 38 seconds in arrears on the same lap to John Harvey, presently piloting car number 25. A lot of laps further back to 4th place Murray Carter and John Goss, Valentine's car number 18, Mazda RX-7. So Mazda RX-7's holding 2nd, 4th. Commodores holding 1st and 3rd. In 5th place, another Commodore, 20, Jim Keogh, Terry Shield.
In fact, it's Bernie Stack. They changed numbers, and it's Bernie Stack in car 20, South Australia.
And then Toyota, Supra, Peter Williamson, Group A, 9 laps down now, and 6th outright.
John Goss doing it his way. The Holden count goes back to 3 on the circuit as Warren Cullen comes back in. But with only 5 laps remaining, it seems inconceivable that Warren Cullen would put it away at the moment, because there's still some prize money hanging even back there in the position he's in.
Peter Fitzgerald in the foreground, that's been sharing the drive with Colin Bond. Round the back of the circuit, Castrol corner, the old Peters corner and Arco corner. Up the kink in the back straight now to where they used to flow over the top, sometimes in top gear, sometimes back to 3rd, bit of a dab of the brakes. It's hard braking at about 200 metres out. And then into this tight, slightly descending 270-degree switchback. Then to this one, which John Harvey likens to a right-hand version of the hairpin at Symonds Plains in Tasmania. Then this very tight infield circuit, which is most of the spot where they pick up the extra 800 metres needed to bring this up to Grand Prix length. Sandown track. And then onto the straight, where previously they used to hike under the Dunlop Bridge at about 180 clicks, flat biscuit in top gear, a very adventurous corner. They come out now punching hard in second at about 80 kilometres an hour. So they come onto the front straight 100 kilometres an hour slower than was the case with the old circuit.
$11,000 is the prize money Peter Brock will pick up for first place in the Castrol 500, and that'll make the Mules, as his pit crew are called, very happy tonight because they're on a bonus.
There was $54,000 up for grabs, a quite substantial prize bag for Sandown. 126 completed. On to 127, 3 remain. Peter Brock absolutely demolishing the field, out surviving the big cars, out driving the smaller ones, backed up beautifully by Larry Perkins, who so nearly made a career in international Formula One. And that's for Brock, and they'd much rather see him come in and give himself a safety buffer. He could almost keep one lap and do it, and let's see. That's the board. I don't know if he's been shown it yet, but that's the board that's on offer to him.
And for
He'll
Brock,
make the decision.
For Brock, it's a difficult decision to make, because to come into the pits means to turn off the engine. To turn off the engine means to take a risk as to whether or not the thing will fire up again, as distinct from staying out there for another 2.5 laps and cruising to the finish line.
If they've done their homework, as some teams do, they would have run the car on very low fuel, and they'd know how many laps from the end, before it runs out totally, the car gasps its way around. In fact, with a dry brake fuel system, they don't have to switch off, so it would be very quick, which is how Hansford was able to do his 9-second stop. Dry brake meaning that there's a safety system that makes it almost impossible to spill fuel. And Terry Shield. No, Melbourne.
That's the Mulvihill and Nightingale car. It looks like it's had a spin, in fact. So Bathurst can breathe easily, because the car will get back up and running again.
A 51.23 second lap for Brock. 126.4. On his 128th lap, his last but one. Now the time when the driver can imagine all sorts of horrors and sounds coming through to him. But what a fantastic drive Peter Brock has stitched together today in a car beautifully built by the Holden dealer team. They ultimately will move to his HDT Special Vehicles workshop, where they make the road cars for the public. But at the moment they're in their old separate premises. And Brock now going out to 2 minutes 40.8
Yep.
over Hansford, so a lap and nearly 50 over the Stuyvesant Mazda. Third place, their teammates 36 seconds in arrears. John Harvey, David Parsons, the other MHDT car, and again, what a superb job of building and driving the team has made of this event. 3 laps in arrears to 4th place, Murray Carter, John Goss, number 18, the blue Mazda.
Here comes Brock into the pits for an emergency stop. He's going to take the fuel. He's got 2 minutes 40.8 seconds. They've even got tyres ready for him. Whether he'll elect to take those is another matter.
Get them out of the way, they say, in fact, I think.
Stopped. One emergency churn. Blow back out. Brock
7.2 seconds.
Yep, 7.28, and Brock is out of the pits. He drops down to probably 2 minutes 20 seconds in front of Greg Hansford. comes out in front of the Nightingale Mulverhill car.
And now goes on to his final lap. Brock, the Sandown crowd hero.
It's been a great debut for the VK Commodore and the Castrol 500 today, and it's been a great debut also for the new Sandown International Motor Racing Circuit. Undoubtedly, Australian motor racing has found a new proving ground at this track, where a lot of drivers will have to do a lot of work to be very much better in future.
Yes, it's produced a number of new unknowns and other problems to be solved, but what a great motor race facility too. The pit area and ultimately VIP and press complex, $600,000 worth alone, and a section of track which I think teams and drivers will become more familiar with and adapt to better. But what a fantastic drive put on, well, car building and preparation by this team, but drive by Peter Rock particularly. Superb backing up by Larry Perkins, going to his 10th victory in this Sandown Enduro. More than one lap in front of the Stuyvesant Mazda, crewed by Alan Moffat and Greg Hansford, and 38 points, a further 38.7 seconds in front of John Harvey and David Parsons in their team car.
Partisan crowd so with Brock now as he heads for the checkered flag, already waving to the plaudits of the crowd. Brock, who took 2 wins and 2 second places to come second in this year's Australian Touring Car Championship, and now well on the way to taking the double again, the Castrol 500 at Sandown and the James Hardy 1000 at Bathurst. Only half the length of the straight remaining for Peter Brock. As he crosses the finish line to take the checkered flag, Warren Cullen will limp through. There he is, to also take the checkered flag. And Peter Brock wins the Castrol 500 for 1984 amongst scenes of jubilation in the pits. In second place, 1 lap behind, will be Greg Hansford with Alan Moffat, and 38 seconds behind them, John Harvey with David Parsons.